And welcome back, everybody. This is your third and final question with regard to the lonely family member stream within the family class. All right, so we saw two great questions already, and hopefully you got those correct, and hopefully you're starting to see this topic in terms of how it might play a role in your upcoming ICCRC Full Skills Exam. Now we'll do the same as usual. I'll read the question out to you, and then you can press pause on the video and work through the question, or you can work through the rest of the video to see a step-by-step analysis of how to handle this particular question in terms of transitioning your knowledge of the lonely family member, of course, into the context of an ICCRC-based question. So we have Abdullah. Abdullah has been living in Canada for the past 8 years and obtained citizenship 3 years ago. Working as a mining supervisor, he tells you that his salary fluctuates between $80,000 and $120,000 per year, depending on the amount of overtime he receives. Abdullah lets you know that although he has been in Canada for 8 years, he is still single and does not have any children. Unfortunately, his parents passed away last year, so his only remaining family member is his brother, Ali, who is a 38-year-old accountant. He tells you that Ali has a master's degree in accounting, speaks English at a CLB 6 level, and has over 20 years of work experience. In addition to this, Ali wants to come to Canada to start a business and to have his wife and kids live at Abdullah's house so they can get to know their uncle better. What would you advise in terms of the possibility of having Ali immigrate? Now we go to our potential answers. We have A. Ali and his family could immigrate under the family class with Abdullah as a sponsor. We have B. Ali would be an excellent candidate for express entry and could immigrate with his family. We have C. Ali could immigrate under the family class with Abdullah as a sponsor, but his family would have to wait for him to sponsor them after 3 years. And we have D. Ali does not qualify to be sponsored under the family class because of his age. Now, if you're going to work through this, you can press pause right now. And remember that these questions are really great at helping you prepare for your full skills exam because you get to see the information that you learned in your immigration practitioner's course summarized and in the context of a question format. All right, so if you want to press pause right now, we'll wait for you. So when you're looking through that scenario, some of these pieces of information should jump out at you. Now, one has to do with Abdullah and the amount of time he's been in Canada, but also his status in Canada. Now we can see that they tell us the amount of money that he makes per year, so that should really be a signal for you in terms of whether or not LICO plays a role in this question. And we have his status as well, so he's single and doesn't have any kids. So again, that would play a role in LICO and of course in some of the sponsorship opportunities that we'll look at. We have the rest of his family situation, so his parents passed away. And then we have his brother, so they give us information about the brother as well, including the brother's education, his language ability, and his work experience. They also talk about the intent a little bit as well, and that is to have Ali and his wife and kids live with Abdullah as a family. Okay, so let's see how all of this information can play a role in choosing the correct answer. Now, when we get back to the question as a whole, it starts to make a little bit more sense when we take a look at the scenario and, of course, those important pieces of information in that scenario. So let's take a look at the question here, which is, what would you advise in terms of the possibility of having Ali immigrate? Now that's the question. We'll take a look at the potential answers as well, and we'll do what we always do. We'll go through each one by one to, again, solidify your knowledge of the Lonely Family Member Program and how it relates to a potential question in the ICCRC Full Skills Exam. So let's begin with C. Now C says Ali could immigrate under the family class with Abdullah as a sponsor, but his family would have to wait for him to sponsor them after 3 years. So this means, of course, that Ali, what they're saying in the scenario here, in the potential answer, is that Ali would immigrate to Canada and then would sponsor his wife and children later on. Now this brings up a really interesting point and a great point to know in the context of family reunification, because what they're asking really here is whether or not Ali can bring his dependent family with him if he can be sponsored by his brother Abdullah. And you can see that he can bring his dependent family, of course. Just remember that the LICO would change in this case. So the LICO with this one here, if Ali is immigrating as a lonely family member, the LICO would be Ali, his wife, the children, and of course Abdullah. So yes, dependent children and spouses can come with the family member being sponsored. So when we take a look at our potential answers, we've eliminated C as being a correct answer. So let's go ahead and take a look at B now. So we have Ali. Now Ali would be an excellent candidate for express entry and could immigrate with his family. So when you take a look at the information we have from the scenario, they talked about Ali's education, his work experience, his age, and his language ability. And you can see he has a master's degree in accounting. His English is at a CLB 6 level, and he has over 20 years of work experience. Now, when you take a look at express entry, and you probably worked through those lessons already. If you haven't worked through the lessons on express entry and the economic programs, you'll do it at some point, and this answer will become a lot more clear after you work through those lessons. This potential answer as well shows you how interlinked all of these different aspects of immigration are in terms of your ICCRC Full Skills Exam. So with Ali, what you're answering here really is whether or not he can immigrate through express entry. And if you know the general requirements of express entry, you know that Ali, as an accountant, would definitely not qualify for the Federal Skilled Trades Program. When you're taking a look at the Canadian Experience class, there is no mention of Ali having any Canadian experience. And finally, when you look at the Federal Skilled Worker Program, remember that the minimum requirement, one of the minimum requirements of the Federal Skilled Worker Program is a CLB 7 in language. So remember, when you're looking at express entry, the person first has to meet the minimum requirements of either the Federal Skilled Trades Program, Canadian Experience class, or the Federal Skilled Worker Program. We can see that in this case, Ali does not meet any of those requirements. So this again allows us to eliminate a potential answer. So now we can see that the only options remaining for us are A and D. So let's take a look at D. Now D says Ali does not qualify to be sponsored under the family class because of his age. And if you remember, in the scenario they gave us his age, and it was 38 years old. So let's take a look at this and compare it to sponsorship requirements in the family class as a whole. So when you are working your way through all these pieces of the puzzle with regard to the family class, there are some areas of family class where age plays a big role in whether or not someone meets the definition in order to immigrate under that program. So remember, with dependent children, age certainly plays a role. With brothers and sisters, nephews or nieces, remember that if you're working your way through those lessons after this one, or if you've worked your way through those lessons before this one, remember that in most cases, brothers or sisters, nephews and nieces would have to be 18 or under and orphaned. Spouses, common law partners, conjugal partners, there is an age requirement in there as well. And adopted children. So if you're going to work your way through the adopted children lesson, the same thing. This will all become way more clear as we work our way through this. Now there are some areas of the family class that do not have an age requirement. That would be someone sponsoring his or her parents or grandparents and uncles or aunts. Now remember that that is just one tiny little element of family sponsorship. With uncles and aunts, in general, they would go under the Lonely Family Member program, which is one of the programs of the family class, which is what we're looking at in this lesson. Okay, so you can see over here that in terms of sponsoring a brother, Ali is 38 years old. Remember, with brothers and sisters, the age requirement of that is for them to be orphaned, first of all, and to be under 18. However, there is something to take a look at, of course, and that has to do with the Lonely Family Member. So remember, the whole reason that the Lonely Family Member stream in family class exists is to allow the sponsor to sponsor someone he wouldn't ordinarily be able to sponsor. And we'll see when we take a look at the next option that Ali actually meets that requirement. Okay, so we've eliminated B, C, and D in our search for the correct answer. Now let's take a look at A, and hopefully you chose this answer right at the beginning, but we'll see why this one is correct. So when we take a look at A as the remaining answer, we have Ali and his family could immigrate under the family class with Abdullah as a sponsor. When we refer back to that scenario, we can see that his only remaining family member is his brother, Ali. Now, when we compare this to those main requirements of a sponsor in order to sponsor somebody under the lonely family member stream of the family class, remember that we're looking at current and future relationships in Canada. Now remember that the sponsor has to prove he doesn't have a Canadian or permanent resident, son or daughter, parent, grandparent, brother or sister, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, or a spouse or common law partner. And in the case of Abdullah, remember that in the scenario, his parents passed away. There's no mention of grandparents. They say that he's single, doesn't have any kids, so there's no son or daughter, no spouse or common law partner or conjugal partner. The brother or sister and nephew or niece, they're not mentioned as being orphans. If they were mentioned as being orphans, we'd have to see if they meet the age requirement of that. But in this case here, there's no mention of them being orphans, of course, and also he doesn't have any family members who he could sponsor. Now that is the real key to answering this question, is knowing if there is anybody that he could sponsor other than someone under the lonely family member. So his nephews and nieces, of course, the parents are still alive because his brother Ali, they mentioned his brother Ali in the scenario. So obviously those kids aren't orphans, so they wouldn't qualify. His brother Ali, I guess he's an orphan now because the parents have passed away, but he's 38 years old, so he doesn't meet those requirements either, of course. There's no mention of any uncles or aunts or anything like that he'd be able to sponsor either, but in general, he wouldn't be able to sponsor an uncle or aunt unless it's through the Lonely Family Member program anyways. And with that, we can see that Abdullah certainly meets the requirements of being a sponsor through this program. And with that, we have the answer as A. Ali and his family could immigrate under the family class with Abdullah as a sponsor. Alright, so thanks for tuning in. If you got that answer correct, a very big congratulations. Remember, the trick with a lot of these questions is to take a look at the sponsor requirements and the person being sponsored as well. This one focused more on Abdullah as a sponsor and whether or not he meets the requirements in order to sponsor his brother, Ali, as a lonely family member, and he did. Alright, so congratulations again if you got the answer correct. And if you didn't, that's not a problem. Just work your way through the lesson again, and it will become more clear as you work your way through this more and more and more. All right, a very big thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you during the next lesson.